All right, so I decided to take my airbrushing to the next level and do some actual whole aircraft striping. So as you can see here, painted up the whole side. I use like a technique where I cut the masking tape with scissors to get some finer pieces of masking tape and be able to get a little more detail. Try to make my additions match up with the graphics that were already on the aircraft. Now this side, I try to do a little experimenting, and I move the blocks on the back side and the yellow stripe away from the original stripes that were there. And here's the paint that I used. And I like using the glass jar. This was my first pass over it and painting it here. And you can see these are the stripes with the tape removed. And then here I put polyurethane. Now you can see these are the stripes on the other side that are a little distance. I wound up liking the ones that were close up. Here's a shot of the wheels. I airbrushed those as well. I thought it came out really good. Again, polyurethane. I coated all the colors in polyurethane afterward to protect them. That keeps them from running. All right, so the train star is pretty much done. This little project is completed. I've done all the paint work I want to do, airbrush work I want to do with it. Definitely learned some lessons along the way. I went back and touched it up later, so you can't see it as bad now, but paint peeled up over here when I took the painting tape away. And then I had a little bit of paint peel up back here as well. Now, I was going to give up on this and just kind of pull it out, but I kind of flapped it back down, and then as you can see, I brushed some poly over it after I got the paint applied. So I'd say the lesson learned is you're much better off doing 2 or 3 coats of very lightly and having a little fan blow on it and let it dry for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And after it's dry, apply another thin coat of paint. If you're painting on plastic or already polyed surface, most people probably know better, but if you put the paint on thick, it breaks up, and then when you try to peel the painter's tape back, it peels up. If you want to really put it on thick, like that's how I want it, do 2 or 3 very thin layers, and then it won't peel up. And now if we move over here to this side I did 2 or 3 thin layers, and look at the difference. Absolutely no peeling on the corners there. So I think it's great. Lesson learned, you know, for me on how to do that. And then decided to do the wheels, which are plastic. Took them off, taped off the tire, sprayed the wheels, put a little poly on that as well, just pretty much so that the paint doesn't wind up coming off. One of the things I noticed before is that, you know, when you, a lot of times we have a grass runway and it's wet, like if you go earlier in the day. So if you don't put a little poly over this stuff, these colors, they get dirty, you can't clean them, and they also run. But so here, after learning the lesson with the paint, so this prop, I actually did 4 layers of paint, and you can see how dark, you know, or how bright, I should say, that color is there, you know. And I got it like that by doing 4 layers. Paint a layer on, let it sit under the fan for 10 minutes, look at it in the angle of the light. It was all dry. I'd paint another layer on, let it dry, paint another layer on, let it dry, paint another layer on, let it dry. So that's how I got these bright, vivid colors like this. And then I went back and I put a coat of poly on it. And then I just figured, because it's a prop and it's spinning and all that, I put a second layer of poly on it. And then of course I polyed the nose cone as well, because you had airbrush on plastic, which will run as the moment it gets wet or, you know, brushes up against something. Now it's all nice and sealed in. I think it looks great.
I'm super happy with the results. It does take a little bit of work. If you want it to come out like this, you're gonna have to do 2 or 3 layers. And it's nice to have a little fan there to help you to dry between coats. After it was all done, I put an extra coat of poly on everything, and again, I'm just using this polyurethane, this satin here. And now for this airplane, these parts are so, I'm using this brush here. So usually I use a 1.5 inch brush. This is a 3/4 inch brush because I'm just doing stripes and small sections. I like the 3/4 inch brush, and what I like to do is take like a bunch of poly and put it on the lid upside down and use the lid like as a working surface. It's actually quite a pain if you get too much poly on there and you put it on the surface. You know, now you've got to spread it around and it starts to drip, and it's just a pain. You just want to put a little bit on the brush, spread it so that it covers the surface, and then it comes out really well. I mean, this looks, I think it looks terrific. It's all polyurethane. Came out, you know, the way I wanted it. Now, one thing that you're gonna have to get familiar with is cleaning this paint gun, and it can be, let's just empty out the water a little bit. It can be a little bit of a pain. Last night I kind of ran into some problems. So first thing you want to do, I recommend the glass jar. I don't like using the little metal thing because as you're painting around, you want to dump, you come close to dumping it. So first thing we're going to do, obviously I had yellow in here. Clean all the yellow out. It's just water based, you know, no rocket science there. Just wash it out in the sink. Give this a little shake. All right, so we've got our pre-done airbrush cleaning solution. Do yourself a favor and order up another bottle. I've used this 3 times and this bottle is almost empty. One thing that is kind of a shame is to get this to really feed up into the bottle properly, you got to put probably a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch in there. So that's almost always going to be wasted at the end of the day. But anyways, that's just how it is. So rinse it out with water, put your cleaning solution in there. We'll grab our gun here, put this back on, get it on there, and what we're going to want to do is run this cleaning solution through the gun. And you can see it's not pumping much out right now. There's yellow coming out, when obviously there's clear fluid in there. Oh yeah, big chunk of yellow. Whoa, don't do that. Feed that right up into there. So you can see the yellow's still coming out. Oh, and our fan just took a ride. I'm not having much luck this minute here. Okay. So, got a big chunk of yellow came out, and pretty soon this cleaner is going to start pumping through. Still got yellow coming out. See, it's still coming out there. Now, I've been painting for like a couple of hours, so this is being a little stubborn. It's all yellow coming out of all this yellow was in the paint gun. And there we go. Now our cleaning solution is starting to go through. And you can see now, look how much cleaning solution is going through now with the air pressure, right? So the reason why it wasn't blowing through a minute ago is because I've been using this gun for about 5 hours, and I've added paint to the mix, the bottle, probably 4 times, and so it starts to dry up in the the nozzle of the gun. Now, one time today I took the nozzle off and cleaned it, because it was getting gunked up and it wasn't working well. So I'll do that first. So first thing I'm going to do is just spray this cleaner through. Obviously, looks like it's coming out pretty clean now. There we go. Now she's pretty much all, canister's all cleaned out. Okay, so while you're painting, now you'll see there's still a little bit of paint in there. While you're painting, if you're stopping and going and stopping and going and stopping and going, you may need to take this tip piece off first and then pull this piece out right here. Alright, so if this thing starts to get gummed up, it's this piece here that's usually the culprit. This is the nozzle, and this is a 0.2 millimeter nozzle. So now we are using paints that are specifically designed for water, for airbrushing. So this 0.2 millimeter nozzle is probably fine. But if we wanted to paint, if we wanted to try to spray like a latex and we didn't want to thin it out too much, we'd want to go with a different nozzle. But anyways, so you want to take it out and just be very careful with it because this thing likes to take off. Now, I was cleaning with this brush and I managed to get that thing stuck on the end of the brush and was looking for it for a couple of minutes. I mean, these little parts and pieces can get, can take off on you. So just kind of familiarize yourself a little bit with this stuff. And yeah, that's about clean. This is another tool that's handy to have, just this pick here. Kind of pick. So take this bottle off. Here's the other thing I really wanted to show you. This back piece off. No, it will not. So if you ever make an adjustment or you're trying to figure out what's going on, this has got to be on for this gun to work properly. This piece right here unscrews first on the back end, comes off. Now your needle will come out. Okay, so here's your needle. Now you just want to pay attention when you push your needle back in. You want it was just about even with that front of this piece here. That's where I want the needle. It's going to be pushed in just a little bit more. When you put it back in, you're going to want to put it back to about that spot. So then just go ahead and pull the needle out, and you can see we cleaned it, but there's paint on there. So that's why it's better to take the thing apart. Now, here's where I kind of got myself in over my head the other night. When you pull that needle out, the trigger will now pop out, okay? So at this point, I am going to turn this pressure off, okay, and I'll just show you how this works. It's actually really, it's not too complicated. It's not too bad if you have some idea what these parts are. It's really not a big deal. So this is like the air nozzle end, okay, and you can see it's got that little press valve right there, okay, and I'm just going to screw this right back in, up into here. This stuff is pre-paint in the brush. All right, so the paint's up here, so this is the stuff you really want to worry about cleaning. I just figured as long as we're in here taking things apart and you have to pull this pin out, we'd go through a couple other things. Now here's the trick. You got to kind of pull this item back here, okay, and you got to set the trigger down in on top of that air nozzle that's down in there. You notice that the trigger has like a space in it, okay. The needle is going to come up through the gun and go right through that space. I'm just going to clean the needle really quick. I'll just use my fingers. Right there. So the needle's all clean. So what we're going to do is push this little spring piece back like so. Sneak this needle in here and try to position it so that it's hitting the top of that valve. Right? So that I can feel it pressing the valve. Perfect. Okay, so now the trigger is where I want it. Now I'm going to feed my needle through, and it's going to go right through the trigger and right up to the front of the gun, and there it is in position. Now you can see it's coming back out with paint on it. Yeah, and this is telling us that there is paint down in there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this needle back out, and we're going to take the next piece of the front off. Now these are parts that really need to be paid attention to when cleaned, because this is where all the paint is going. And this is the part here in particular where this brush really comes in handy. You can see the paint in this piece, and we're just gonna run this brush right through here, kind of like a bore cleaner on a rifle, right? And so this is like the first stage of the front of the nozzle. So we'll clean this, okay? So now that this is nice and clean, put it back in the gun. All right. Our trigger didn't even come out. Let's hope it's still lined up. Got our paint off of our needle. Watch the needle, it is very sharp, it will get you. Push it up through the gun. Yep, it went through the trigger and it's coming out, and we are still coming out with paint on it. So that's cleaning the brush, and some tips on doing the work. I did use a pair of scissors at some point and had the tape out and then just cut it into strips and laid it on the fuselage when I was airbrushing it, and that was how I was able to accomplish that effect right there, and make these yellow blocks match right up with these red and black. I mean, I'm really happy with it. To me, I think it looks really factory. On the other side, I try to do a little space. I think the no space looks better. This is kind of like an experimental plane. I'm just kind of trying all these things out. So there it is. Some paint techniques and how to clean the gun. Something you're definitely going to need to know how to do.